Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Let's accept our oneness with God. The end of the video. The end. No, it's not the end because, as always, there's much more to say about a very simple statement. So let's unpack this. Let's accept right now, today, the idea of our oneness with God. Perfect oneness. No separation. There is no separation ever of any kind. If you're just joining us, welcome. Welcome to A Course in Miracles. It's a pleasure to have you here. Something, if you're new or if you've watched a couple of these videos, I know many of you have watched quite a few of them. There are over 900 now in this series. So wherever you find yourself on your particular spiritual path, these ideas expressed here in A Course in Miracles are very simple. They're simply restated over and over again to form a book that, when bound and put together, is well over 1,000 pages. We're saying the same things again and again on different days, using slightly different language in what only appears to be a different context. Repetition, as we find here in life, in all aspects of life, of course, is key. It's key to building and forming a habit, isn't it? No matter what walk of life we're talking about, it's about forming a habit. This course is about changing your mind and developing a new set of mental habits. It's about learning to see things as they are. We do not see them as they are when we see ourselves as individuals, as human beings, as a body, separate, of course, from the 8 billion other human bodies, plus all of the other countless multiple life forms that appear to exist here. They all appear separate from one another, yet they are not separate. There is no separation of any kind. So let's start by accepting this very simple idea. There is no separation of any kind. This means we're not separate from our brother, and we're not separate from God. There is no separation of any kind. So we have only to accept this. Simple. Accept truth just as it is. And that's where we run off the rails needlessly, but we do. Here in the world, we complicate things. Think of what a complicated mess we've made of our daily lives. We have to-do lists that are a mile long, and that's just at home. Throw in work or a career or taking care of the kids, going grocery shopping, checking our email, going to the bathroom, eating, sleeping, getting a glass of water, maybe making a cup of tea. There are endless things that appear to define our life. So when we're in the midst of that, we don't pause to do what you're doing right now, is consider that there's more to it than that. So I thank you for joining me. And more than that, I thank you for your dedication and commitment to spiritual practice, whether it involves this course or not. What we're talking about here is universal. I can say that with 100% certainty because this course is a self-study course. It is not a religion, so it does not say, thou shalt have no other religions. Thou shalt not go to the building across the street that may look fancy, but it's different than yours. No, there's no separation of any kind. It's a self-study course. It is a curriculum in which you can elect to take whatever you want to take at a given time. I would submit that you elect to take whatever you're willing to take at a given time and however far you're willing to go, with the idea that you are one with God at any given time. And it may be that you will need to hear this very theme, this very idea, multiple times before it begins to sink in, before you begin to recognize the truth, which may seem just like a grain of truth at first. It may seem like a moment or a quick little flash of truth, but it's true. There is no separation of any kind. So here on what we call the spiritual path, we attenuate ourselves to that. We grow accustomed to it. We accept it for ourselves. We train our mind to see things as they really are. This is the purpose of this course, to help us learn to perceive things as they really are. Then truth dawns of itself. The truth of our perfect oneness in God, where, by the way, you've never left all appearances to the contrary. As we wrap up the introduction to chapter 10 of the text, right here in the third paragraph, we're told that God does not change his mind about you. This is so because he's not uncertain of himself. God does not change his mind about you because he's not uncertain of himself. Remember, there is no separation of any kind, and an example that I often use here of our mistaken perception otherwise is Greek mythology, where the gods sat up on Olympus, the separate gods, the council, so to speak, sat on top of Olympus, meddling in earthly human affairs. And then some of them would come down and sleep with this one and chastise this one, and as the human beings would curry favor with the multiple gods, they would give favors to one at the expense of another. There is no separation of any kind. There is only perfect oneness. We say here, as we talk about A Course in Miracles, God is. That's it. In other words, or in more words, because we tend to need further explanation of the truth, only God is. God is fact with a capital F, reality. All else is illusion. This means that anything that changes, anything that shifts or transforms in any way is not real. It is illusion. That's just for starters. So what we tend to think of as a path, a spiritual path, or your walk, or whatever it is you'd like to call your journey. I would call it a journey, in fact. That's the perfect word, the way we think about it here in the world, whatever you call it, it's really a process of removing a veil, in a manner of speaking. It's called awakening for a reason. We're asleep, dreaming of separation, yet in reality, there is no separation. So our spiritual awakening can rightly be likened to waking up from a dream here in the world where we see things that appear very real, don't they? The images that we see when we're asleep or taking a nap and we have a dream here in the world appear very real. We hear sounds, we taste and touch things, and they all appear to shift wildly and randomly, and they're weird oftentimes, aren't they? So we do things that we aren't able to do here in the world, like fly. Have you ever had a dream of flying? We could have dreams of being in multiple different places at the same time, or levitating ourselves instantly from one part of the world to the next through the power of our mind, things that we're not able to do when we think we're an ego, an individual. Yet when we awaken from this dream, however beautiful, however hot and sexy it may be, or however terrifying, when we wake up, we instantly recognize that that was a dream and that it was never there. All of the images that we saw in the dream were never there. The people that we appeared to interact with in the dream were never there. None of it was ever there. This is why they call this thing called enlightenment awakening, or realizing God, or whatever you want to call it. Everything that God knows can be known. God himself can be known. Another way we would say that here in the world is experienced. The experience of who and what and where we are is beyond all words. It's beyond concepts completely, including the convention of language, which, when you think about it, is a series of sounds in themselves completely meaningless that we've gotten together and agreed are going to symbolize certain things. They're not the things themselves. They're going to stand for them so that we may communicate with one another. So what's going on right now is you're hearing this collection of sounds that we refer to as the English language, wherever you find yourself in the world. When something hits and lands, when it rings true, it is the Holy Spirit speaking to you. It is our inner teacher. We would do very well indeed to listen to our inner teacher and to do as he instructs us. Because we're one with God, nothing can reach you or harm you from beyond, because there is nothing outside of you. There is nothing outside of you. God is. There's nothing outside of you to harm, belittle, or bother you in any way. And by the way, in case you were wondering, God would never decide against you, because he would be deciding against himself. He is not at conflict with himself. So this fictitious reality that we've set up in our mind of a separate God, a jealous or vindictive God, is simply an illusion. It's a thought that we could choose right now in the present moment to set aside and to allow truth to be just as it is. Truth is perfect oneness. God is. He's not separate from you, so he's not going to punish you. You are not a sinner. God has no ego to be offended. If you've never heard that, you'll hear it again. You'll hear it from me, and it's highly likely that you'll hear it from others, especially if you choose to continue your journey. There is no sin if you were raised, as I was, to think that we're all miserable sinners, deserving of divine punishment, wrath, and death. God doesn't get angry or wrathful or jealous. There is only perfect oneness. We're the ones that impute this jealousy and wrath on to him. When we think that we're separate, we become deeply afraid. And we automatically think that our brother, other people, are out to get us. We think our brother's going to strike and attack us. We may or may not fear a physical attack, but we're always suspicious. So we manipulate our life experience and we orchestrate our life experience so that things work out the way we want them to. And when they don't work out the way we want them to, we become even more afraid, or we lash out in anger or rage, or we become deeply anxious or depressed. When what we're invited to do is to give over this control to our inner teacher and let our inner teacher run the show. Of ourselves, when we attempt to decide things as little egos, we cannot guarantee that what we're going to say or do is going to serve the maximum best interest of every single living thing throughout space and time with 100% certainty, can we? When you answer no, we certainly can't guarantee that. Understand that our inner teacher can and does, so we leave it to him. And we act under our inner teacher's guidance. You could rightly state that spirituality itself is about allowing. It is. It's about accepting truth just as it is and dropping our defenses to it. If you've never thought of yourself as defending yourself against the truth, I invite you to contemplate that often. That's what's going on here in the world, where we think we're individuals and we attempt to orchestrate, manipulate, and control all phenomena. It's out of a deep insecurity, anxiety. So we're invited to acknowledge that and let it go. There's no need to cling to it. This is why the practice of true forgiveness is truly the practical centerpiece of A Course in Miracles. When we talk about learning through our own experience, which, by the way, is how it's done, we put these ideas into practice, and in forgiving, we overlook the surface and get to the core of things, our perfect oneness. So we let all of the outside fluff, the drama, the psychodrama, all the BS, we just let it go. We forgive it and release it. forgive and release, rinse, repeat. Now, in this series of videos, what we often do is we often pause to have a conversation that is directly centered around true forgiveness. So every now and then we'll take a pause through our progression through the text of A Course in Miracles and have a conversation that's directly related to true forgiveness, which is, if you're just joining us or you're new to the course, the practical centerpiece of A Course in Miracles. It's a self-study course. Remember, we really learn by doing it. That's where the action is in our practical application of these ideas, because our experience shows us, it proves to us that these ideas are true. So we prove it to ourselves. Want proof? Great. We prove this to ourselves. Skeptical? Great. Ask questions. Ask your inner teacher. There is no separation of any kind. You're one with God. All right. You'll hear that again often. So along the way, the spiritual path can be a wild ride sometimes, can't it? Along the way, questions are bound to come up because we all have these days, as a living, breathing, practical matter, where the path or our practice seems to generate more questions than it does answers. We've all had those days. It's quite common, and you may be in the throes of one of those days right now. If that's the case, please feel welcome to reach out here and ask questions. Questions and comments are more than welcome, no matter what your experience level with this material. There are people here that have been course students and practitioners for over 30 years, and some that are just checking it out for the very first time, and everything in between. So no matter what your experience level is, please feel welcome to leave questions here. And if you have not yet subscribed, I'd love to have you join us. The subscription button is here in the corner of your screen. It's that arrow. Just click or hover over that, and a brilliant little message comes up saying subscribe. And we'd love to have you. Thank you to all of you who have recently joined us. There have been a number of you. These videos appear several times a week, and we're going through the text of A Course in Miracles. We're on chapter 10 out of 31, which of course means there's always plenty more to discuss. All right, so questions and comments are most welcome, guys. Thank you for joining me. I'll talk to you soon.